You see here, this is a fucking IRA, right? There's a bomb in a bin, right? You got 30 minutes. Boof. Because the IRA were really kind terrorists.
Hello, Internet. You're listening to the In Your House Comedy Podcast with
Kd and Kersey.
Now hold on to your butts. Keep your arms and legs inside the podcast at all times. Prepare to have an autographical orgasm in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so welcome everybody then to the Kd and Kersey podcast, the show where we talk about all things weird and or interesting. I am your resident stand-up comedian, Kd Hinken. Unfortunately, Kersey cannot be here this week, but I am joined by a special guest, a fellow funny friend of mine from around the comedy circuit. He is the epitome of German engineering and the minister of the middle-class masses. Say that again. The minister of the middle-class masses. Please welcome Mr. Alex Plant. How are you, dude?
Hello, you're right. Good to meet you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Oh,
So,
how you doing, dude?
Very good. A little bit depressed after the quiz the other day, but you were great in it, so thank you very much for both of you did, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was so much fun. Like, honestly, like creating some of the material for it was so those news stories. I sat and I wrote. Yeah, so I sat and I wrote those, like the penguin one and all that sort of stuff. I literally sat and like wrote them like I was writing material.
So just explain exactly what the game was then for anyone that didn't see it, you know.
Yeah, so the game was a game that I call Fatal Fiction, where basically, obviously, the media's been a little bit mental recently with the whole like, obesity crisis and everything like that. And I was like, right, how can I make this funny? So I took media stories, a bit like Have I Got News for You, and took media stories and headlines and the gist of a story. And the contestants basically had to decide whether or not it was fact, i.e. a true story, or fiction. I completely made it up. So obviously I had to write a load of fake news stories.
That's the thing. We were thinking originally when you said this concept, we were like, well, any of the ones he's going to write, they're going to be shorter. They're not going to be as long or something. But no, you put effort into that shit.
Yeah. Like literally, I sat as if I was writing material. So it was literally a case of like, right, okay, what would the news thing do? And it slipped up a few people, and it was really fun to do.
Okay. God's sake, Mom's watching football. Or was it the one that you did? Oh God, sorry. Okay, I get it. Fucking hell, she's watching that charity football thing that's going on ITV at the moment.
Oh yeah. It's a great thing. There's the other one was off the script. Like I thought that was quite a difficult round, but
yeah, I thought I'll be honest, I thought I would have done a lot better on that because I love my films and that, but I think I knew for definite too. And that was probably just either the actor. No, there was one where I knew the actor and the film. It was Airplane. That was the only one I knew.
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about who came in last or anything, though. We can move on.
Yeah. Just you, KD. Just you.
Oh no, you did a really good job, man. I really enjoyed that as well. Fucking chilling for me.
Yeah. It was really, really fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do it again. But I'm sure. Are you coming on the next one on the 16th?
Yeah, definitely. I'm the resident Alan Davies now, so yeah, it's good to be involved in it, in all fairness, because it's just nice to get like everyone together because the comedy scene.
Exactly, yeah. It's the one thing we have at the moment. Because I mean, I'm still debating now how alive the live comedy scene is, but it's something. But we still need something else, basically. I think that kind of supports. Yeah,
it's got a pulse. It's still, the heart's beating. It's just slightly comatose. It's a bit like if you went out drinking for 7 days straight on Freshers Week. The hangover, like, it's probably about 4 weeks. It's it's in that stage. It's in the hangover stage.
Yeah. Before we go on, I saw a fucking great kind of true crime story the other day that was on Judge Rinder, and I had to just quickly mention this.
Yeah.
There was a guy. Basically, they were a bingo kind of two guys. They were bingo rave bingo they did, but it basically just involved a guy in a gorilla suit. But it was a cross-dressing gorilla that had like rollers in his hair, had like a bra on, usually a skirt, and he rode around in a mobility scooter. And what they decided to do was they were going to go like on the island, just advertise a bit with the gorilla there, talking to the people in the car, showing the sign, all that. And 4 people legitimately thought that the gorilla had escaped from the zoo up the road, and they called the police, and the police came down with guns and everything drawn on the fucking gorilla. That's it.
Wow.
By the way, I meant to ask you, do you want to go first or second today?
I'll go first. Yeah, I'll go first because I quite like the story that I've got, the true crime story, because they did a film about it as well, which is really
cool.
So you ever heard of anyone called a bloke called Mr. Nice?
Mr. Nice. That's something to do with
Mr. Nice. No. So Mr. Nice is a guy called Howard Marks, right? And Howard Marks is the guy who basically introduced the UK to cannabis, right?
Okay.
So he was a Welsh guy, and he was like the only one in his town. Is talking 1960s, and he basically grew up, and he went to schools. He went to a grammar school, and then he got into Oxford. And whilst he was at Oxford, he discovered marijuana, and then basically started selling marijuana to his sort of university friends. And then sort of branched out, and he basically got in touch with a drug dealer in Afghanistan, a supplier in Afghanistan of hashish, basically rocks. So he started bringing over huge quantities of hashish. So he needed a way in order to get into smuggling all this stuff over. So obviously the IRA was a big thing at the time. And he basically got in with James McCann. James McCann is the name of the IRA guy. This guy would basically, they would import huge amounts into Ireland and then get the ferry over from Ireland and drive, because the IRA had control of an airport in Ireland. And they would drive over from Ireland to Wales and basically take it into the UK. And the reason he got the name Mr. Nice is he stole the passport off a guy. So he bought a stolen passport off a guy, like a murderer, who was nicknamed was his surname was Nice, and he became Mr. Nice.
Wait, so he to cover his identity, he took the identity of a murderer? Basically,
yeah. He wasn't a murderer at the time, and then later on it was found out that he was a murderer, and that's how he got the name Mr. Nice, because he stole this guy's name. But yeah, basically James McCann was a drug runner for the not a drug runner, gun runner for the IRA, and he would do he'd do things like he would stop. So obviously when the heat got a bit too hot, he would then call in like an IRA thing. So if they were like if the police were getting a bit too hot on the trail of these drugs, he'd phone up and do the standard IRA thing of, right, you here, see here, this is a fucking IRA, right? There's a bomb in a bin, right? You got 30 minutes, boof. Because the IRA were really kind terrorists. They would phone up and let you know that there was a bomb.
Really? Yeah, I have seen that a few times. Yeah,
it's like the weirdest kind of terrorism ever. Like really nice people. Like the Irish are really nice people. They phone up and tell you that there's a bomb outside. Like tell you how long you've got. It's like what? It makes no sense.
From a terror organisation, they just want to install fear. So I suppose that would work.
Yeah, I think I think that is like a much simpler kind of terrorism. I think it's fantastic. I think just phoning up and
Kind of
saying
them.
and saying there's a bomb outside. It's just like simpler times, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, homegrown terrorism as well.
Do you remember
Yes.
Umbridge Farm? What is that, Umbridge Farm? Doesn't matter, carry on.
So one of the guys that he went to Oxford with, he basically was approached by a guy called Hamilton Macmillan, who was who was recruited into MI6. So for a while, all the stuff that he did was overlooked by the authorities because he was helping MI6 with the IRA.
Yeah.
So, like, honestly, like the ultimate sort of thing in regards to like a massive drug dealer, introducing the UK to millions upon millions of pounds worth of hashish, right? He then got in with with MI6, and MI6 is basically covering up for him because he's helping them with the IRA.
I can see them, like, choosing to combat the IRA over just shipping in bud, which they probably there probably wasn't as much of a taboo about it then either, because it's been smeared a lot more since. So back then they probably just saw it for what it was.
Yeah, this was sort of 60s and 70s. Exactly. So you're talking late 60s.
The coppers were on cocaine, so I ain't going to give a shit about bud.
Yeah, late 60s when he started. 1972 when he started, he was making £50,000 in 1972 per shipment.
That's a lot now with Ireland, isn't it?
That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money nowadays.
I'm throwing out a number right there, but I'm probably guessing around like 200 grand or something. Sounds like the right kind of thing.
Easily.
Yeah.
You're probably talking, more than that, 250, a quarter of a mil, easy. And he then started shipping out to the United States through the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. Like, there was this like brotherhood set up. It was really like a cult. And he started shipping like all the marijuana out to there.
A cult of a load of stoners. That sounds like a cult for me, that does.
Together
talking about what is consciousness? I don't know.
Yeah, it was basically a bunch of hippies. And he basically one of his guys got arrested. So he was arrested in 1973 and skipped bail. And basically, the British press sort of made him a nationally known figure. And he basically just escaped all over Europe because he would ship out his drugs in music equipment under like fake bands that were touring America and stuff like that. And he was only discovered when one of the authorities broke out, like they dropped a speaker and the speaker came apart, and obviously all this hashish is in the speaker.
I mean, it's smart though, because the one thing I watched specifically about the IRA was the Showdown massacre, and they were talking about how the bands would go from one to the other and then go somewhere else. So that's the thing that makes sense, would be traveling around then. So yeah. And by this point, then I'm guessing the police had enough of him.
Basically, yeah. By like 75, he was, he got his sort of drug empire. So in 1975, it was like massive drug empire, and then obviously America got pissed off with him. So America started cracking down on the drug thing. Other cartels and other things that were going on, and he was starting to sort of lose his touch.
Oh, of course, yeah, because wouldn't that be around all the same time as like what's his name? That the one everyone knows,
Pablo Escobar.
That's the one, yeah. That's that kind of time, isn't it?
Yeah, so obviously, like the smuggling and stuff like that, obviously different drug, but like the whole smuggling ring and everything, and the DEAs.
They were all into blood too. They were.
Yeah, I mean the DEA's like cracking down at this point on everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And Marx was basically put in prison. I mean, he didn't go into prison until like the mid 80s. So you're talking the mid-'80s. This guy from late '60s to mid-'80s has been running a massive drugs empire. You know, part helped by MI6 and the IRA, right?
That's more. I think I'd be more surprised when you find out those kind of stories of these huge like corporations, like drug corporations that haven't had somehow back in the day from the police or whatever, you know, some kind of governing body. I think that's more surprising.
Yeah. The irony was he was busted by the Royal Canadian Mounties.
Oh.
He was busted by the Mounties in 1988.
Oh. Any coolness he built up just disappeared in that moment.
Yeah, just completely disappeared. But he studied law whilst he was in prison, and he would help other people to, the people who weren't hadn't got proper lawyers and all that sort of stuff by the state. Yeah. He would basically help them whilst in prison. He got off. He was meant to do 20 odd years, and he got off with seven years.
It's a really strange thing that you'd imagine that out of anything you'd let a criminal learn, law wouldn't be the first.
Yeah.
For me. You know, fair enough, whatever, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Basically got out in the late 90s and started writing his autobiography. So Mr. Nice, the books, and then about 10 years ago, a film came out by the title Mr. Nice, and that's essentially how he got into the public eye. He died about 3 years ago, I think it was.
In the film, I think I'm thinking of Mr. Nice Guys. That's not the same thing. So it was Nice Guys.
So film came out 10 years ago, 2010. Reese Ifans was Howard Marks. Omar Jalili played Salim Malik, the drug runner in Afghan, basically.
You sold me with Reese Ifans, to be honest.
Yeah. Who else? Oh, David Ferris was Jim McCann.
I don't know that person. Oh, is it one of them ones I'll probably know his face when I look at him?
Yeah, probably.
God.
And Howard Marks himself was in the film. Yeah, 2010. Mr. Nice.
Oh, wow. Oh, no, I don't reckon. I'm definitely going to watch this now, though, to be honest with you.
Really good film, mate. Really, really good film.
Damn good actors all playing him. No, that's cool.
Howard Marks, Mr. Nice.
Cool. Oh, thank you for that, Alex. I like that one.
You're welcome.
It's quite surprising to me, to be honest, that I don't know the person who brought, or don't know the story at all of the person who brought Bud to England.
Basically, yeah. He just made it, he flooded the market, basically.
Yeah, turned it into, made it so that it's everywhere, That's the thing, actually, yeah. You always hear about, coke and stuff coming over and all the big drugs and that. You never hear about Bud.
Yeah.
I've never thought about it.
Well, a lot of it is homegrown now.
Yeah.
There's just warehouses and stuff like that.
Man, one got busted by me the other day. I was so sad. I saw it South Yardley, about, 5 minutes from me. I was like, oh, no. My dealer's okay, so it's fine. My illegal florist, it's fine. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, then, yeah. So, as always, then, the Kd Kersey podcast, or Kd and Alex podcast today, is brought to you by Nobody's Priority Apparel Clothing. If you go on and use promo code KD Promo, and that's KD Promo with zeros instead of O's, and you get 25% off. But more importantly than anything, it helps us get a bit of money. So you'll have these soon, actually. Oh, I forgot. You'll have these on there soon. Oh, Kd Kersey masks. Oh, I forgot about this, Al. I was wearing this on the whole quiz on my head. Completely forgot to make a mention of it. I had it tied around my head with some wool, some wool that my mum used for knitting. Completely forgot about it the whole time.
Your organisation is the worst. It's just
yeah, it doesn't come natural to me, man. I'm better than I used to be, trust me.
Yeah.
So just go on to that then. You can get onto it. It's teesprings.com it is on, but I find the easiest way to get onto it is just go onto Facebook, type in Nobody's Priority Clothing, and get through it through that way. Okay then.
Your turn.
Do you know anything, first of all, about Lizzie Borden?
Name rings a bell, but no.
Okay, that's what I was hoping for. Okay, so Lizzie Borden, me personally, I always knew her more as a ghost story, like her house is apparently haunted by her and by the other people involved in the story in a minute. I was just watching a ghost hunt of it about like a year ago, and then I found out a little bit of the history, so I found out more about it now. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So it is. We're over to America. It's Fall River in Massachusetts on August 4th, 1892. Just a quick explanation of what happened first. Basically, the bodies of Andrew and Abby Borden were found hacked to death in their home. And based on the wounds that they had inflicted, it was believed that they were killed with an axe or a hatchet type weapon. However, the only piece of evidence collected from the scene was a totally clean hatchet head, and no handle was ever recovered. Living in the house at the time was Lizzie Borden, who was 32 years old, her sister Emma Borden, 41 years old, Andrew Borden, the one victim, her father, Abby Borden, the other victim, her stepmother. There was also John Morse, an uncle who was visiting, and then there was Maggie, the family maid. However, Emma Borden, the sister, was out of town at the time of the murder.
It's like Cluedo.
So that's the
Where's
basic.
Professor Plum?
He makes an appearance, though, don't you?
Colonel Mustard.
Well, do you know what, though? In all fairness, he's very much like that, because the way I always heard this story, before I heard the story, sorry, I just heard Lizzie Borden. I always assumed it was something where it was like, okay, she's an evil fucker, no doubt about it all. But then I read the story and I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense. So, see what you think. So the timeline for the actual day of the murder, anyway. So 7 a.m. Abby, his stepmother, Andrew, the father, and John, the uncle, were having breakfast, which was prepared by Maggie, and I can hear everything you're typing.
Sorry.
It's cool.
Hold on. It's all right. I got a message I just got to reply to. I keep, you know when you're sort of like, you get a message, you're like, need to reply to that, otherwise they're going to think I'm dead. It's like, yeah,
I have to remind myself to message back to you. You've probably seen it yourself. Like, you message me and it takes me like 4 hours to get back to you.
Yeah.
Okay, then. So 7 a.m. Abby, Andrew, and John had breakfast, which was prepared by Maggie, the maid. The Uncle John then announced that he was going to see other relatives from around town. At about 8:30 a.m., John Morse leaves the house. Lizzie didn't come down for breakfast that morning because she was feeling sick, because the whole family had food poisoning over the last couple of days.
Ooh.
Yeah. There is a weird testimony in regards to that, but I'll mention it later. But it wasn't used in court, though, so it's a bit, But 9 a.m., Andrew Borden left to go to work. At this time, Lizzie, or a bit after, it's not specific on the time frame of this exact bit, but Lizzie then sent the maid outside to wash the windows, which the maid did, but she started being ill outside because of the food poisoning, and returned to the house. And as she was returning to the house at about 11 a.m., Andrew Borden was coming back from work. He was letting the house.
What year did this happen?
1892.
1892.
1892, nice little historic one. Yeah, so as she was going back in, Andrew Borden was coming back to the house because he didn't feel very well either. So he decided to come back in, and he was going to sleep on the settee of the front room during his lunch break. And the maid thought, okay, great, so I'm going to go have a sleep upstairs too. Which she did. She went up to the second floor room to sleep. However, before she was able to fully fall asleep, she's not too sure exactly how long after, because you wouldn't be aware if you're falling asleep. But before she was able to fully fall asleep, she heard Lizzie shouting from downstairs, "Come down quick, father's dead. Somebody's come in and killed him." The maid states she then saw Lizzie standing there when she came down. She saw Lizzie standing there and Andrew Borden, who was laying on the settee with 11 axe shots to the face.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How do you feel so far with that?
11 axe shots to the face. That is a crime of passion. That is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's like fucking. Whew. See, I love the psychology. I love the whole psychological thing of murders and stuff like that.
You will like them because I've got a little list of some of the motives and all that, so you'll like it in that case.
Ooh.
But after that, though, directly after, Lizzie then asked the maid to go get the doctor from across the street, which she did, but she also returned with the neighbour as well, who was a friend of the family. Lizzie then says to the maid when she comes back, a few, like 5 minutes later or so, Lizzie then says to the maid, referring to her stepmother, "Oh, Maggie, Oh, Maggie, I'm almost sure I heard my stepmother come in. Go upstairs and see if she is there." So Maggie and the neighbour then go upstairs to discover the body of Abby Borden, the stepmother, laying face down, this time with 18 axe shots to the back of the head.
Jesus.
Yep, so even more crime of passion there, like you said.
Like, once they're dead, they're dead. I mean, like, stop. Just stop. Once they fall over, stop. They're already dead. They're not going to wake up. Like, honestly, like, you smash someone in the head with an axe a couple of times. Trust me, they're dead. They're not going to get back up. 18 times, that's just overkill.
There's pictures of the of how they looked, because like the first thing I watched, it was like a little.
How they look? I bet they didn't look. Like, honestly, I bet they didn't have a face. Andrew,
especially, because his face was the one that was
gone after.
He was gone. They showed like a rendering of what it looked like after, and there was nothing there, obviously. Yeah, it doesn't go that much into the mom, but it's back of the head, so I imagine it's probably more the same. But I'm not. I was thinking about putting the pictures on, but I decided against it.
Yeah. No skull left. You hit someone in the back of the head with a hatchet, like their skull. That's gone.
Yeah, 18 fucking times. A couple of times have been enough. So as you've already guessed, and obviously the number one suspect was Lizzie Borden. Lizzie Borden herself, though, a little bit about her. She was everyone that they talked to said that she was a really nice girl, a really pious girl, I think it is, like religious and all that. She was a Sunday school teacher because she wasn't allowed to have a job then, but she did Sunday school teaching. She did a lot of other things in the community. Andrew Borden, her dad, had a very lucrative business, but he was very frugal with his money, to the point that it used to anger Lizzie Borden and her sister Emma that they basically lived in this big house, but they lived on a mutton-only diet, basic everything, didn't have indoor running water, indoor plumbing, despite it being widely available at the time. She was also very angry as well. I think it was about 5 or 6 years before this, there was an incident where he bought a house for Abby Borden, the stepmother's own daughter, so their stepsister again, half sister. That caused a rift between Lizzie Borden and Abby, where she went from calling her mom to Mrs. Borden. Eventually, the dad realised that was wrong, though, and what he actually did, he gave the deed to the house where they were all living, to Emma and Lizzie. Then took it straight back about a month later. Also, as well, I only learned this recently. She had a bunch of pigeons on the roof, and about a week before the murders, the dad decided to kill them all to save space and to use the meat, and he used a hatchet to do it.
Oh, okay.
Which was also never recovered.
Right. That seems to make some sense.
Yeah, I thought that was quite an interesting one. After the murders, though, Lizzie and her sister inherited the estate anyway and bought a new cottage following the murders with the money very quickly. But by this point, everyone had already assumed it was her. So would you wait? I don't know. Like,
yeah, it's a bit like, it sort of, if everyone thinks it's you, then, you just do it anyway, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, they had a little rhyme that was going around for her. Which is still which was the first thing that I heard about Lizzie Borden ever. Like, the rhyme is that the kids and I used to play is Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she realised what she'd done, she gave her father 41. Bit embellished, but what a surprise.
Yeah.
But she'd also.
There's going to be a point in like 10 years' time. It's like, she hit him 574 times in the head.
I'm See, the thing is, though, she had also given wildly inconsistent answers during her interviews with the police. And it only took 9 days of trial, and after only 90 minutes of the jury deliberating, she was found not guilty.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Why do you think that is? Any idea so far? Why do you think she was caught?
They haven't really got any proof of a murder weapon. Plus, she's got pretty decent sort of testimonial alibis. I mean, all the evidence that's there is circumstantial.
And the time, I forgot to mention, the time frame was really small as well.
Yeah.
In regards to when, like I said, like in regards to when the maid went down to, when she was there and Andrew went to sleep and then went up to bed, very small time frame.
Yeah, it's all circumstantial evidence.
Exactly. There was something great that I learned about from the trial. It's got nothing to do with what happened, but I just thought it was hilarious. Apparently, the trial started, and the first thing that happened was the prosecution. The prosecution walked over to the evidence table, tripped, and apparently knocked into it and knocked the two skulls straight out of the bag, and they went smashing on the floor. And then Lizzie fainted.
Wow.
And then it had to be adjourned for 2 more days or something at that point.
In all fairness, if your main murder suspect is fainting, right, that's a pretty good giveaway that unless they're possessed by the devil at the time or, so in the moment, because
I know what you're saying.
There's a point on the realization of what you've done, like crime of passion. Once you realize what you've done, that's it. Then you're just like,
once you've got over that passion, then it'll hit you what you've done, and you can't take it back then.
Yeah.
So that alone, which that's why I wanted to mention it, because I thought it was quite interesting, which you may be able to see, and from some of these other things, why the tide turned in the trial. So why was she innocent? Firstly, it came out that during those interviews where she was giving wild inconsistent testimony, she was actually doped up with morphine during all of them because the doctor thought it would calm her down.
Right.
So she was drugged up, so a lot. So that's fair enough.
Fair play. Howard Marks wasn't there, was he?
But the thing is, none of that mattered anyway, though, because let's be fair, in a trial, they could swing it either way. Even if she was on morphine and they brought it into trial, the prosecution could swing it. But it didn't matter because she was never read her Miranda rights before the interviews, which means she was not aware of her right to remain silent. So all of these interviews were not admissible in court. They never heard them.
Yeah.
But for the last key piece of evidence, though, you need to go back to the maid's testimony, which is what we covered earlier mainly. So she stated that when she ran down the stairs to see Andrew Borden dead, Lizzie Borden was wearing a blue dress, the same blue dress that she'd been wearing earlier, and it was completely unstained and cleaned. The defence pointed out that the time frame was far too small, as she would have had to kill Andrew, disposed of her. She would have had to change out of hers first, but that could have been any time. Then she would have had to kill Andrew, disposed of her blood-soaked clothes and a murder weapon which was never found, clean herself off, put on a new dress, which is a very long process back then, apparently.
Yeah, massive. Honestly, that's why you had chambermaids.
Yeah, exactly. So all of that in about the space of 5 minutes.
Wow.
And God knows where she would have gone to dispose of this weapon, because, like I said, there was only ever a hatchet. So if we assume the hatchet in the bathroom, in the basement, was a murder weapon, she would have had to somehow clean that all off and get rid of the handle for some reason.
Yeah.
So,
can't do it.
No. There was no physical evidence, like you've already said, whatsoever that tied her to the crime, despite a year of investigation prior to the trial. So a year of it, and that's all they could do.
In all fairness, though, I mean, all the technology and everything back then was just, they hadn't really got any.
Apparently, they had fingerprints. They had all fingerprint technology, because they said they didn't find any prints or anything down there.
Yeah, they had fingerprint technology back then, but that was about the base of the technology. DNA didn't come about until 60s, 70s.
Oh, later than that. I think it was more 80s, 90s, man. Right, but and even that, most of that was debatable, because they would do the whole, what was it, the secretor thing, and all there was a load of weird things about it, ain't there, that they used to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, personally, I wouldn't even be surprised anyway if the fingerprints back then wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have been particularly good at it, at setting it all off. You know what I mean? Like,
No.
it wouldn't have been as bang on as it is now.
No, you haven't got dust and whatever. You haven't got, they'd use charcoal maybe to look for prints, and that's about it.
So very few people in the community very few people that knew her believed it, that it was her. But by this point, it had been all over the newspapers for the last year, So everyone, she became famous for being this person that killed her parents and got away with it. But I look at this and I don't know if it would be her. It doesn't make that much sense to me.
I don't think she would. Like, with all the evidence that's there, the time frame and everything, that it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and then going by
like, if she wasn't read her Miranda rights, like, okay, none of that was admissible in court, but like, at the end of the day, someone would have spoke out and said she said this, that, and the other in her police interviews.
And it doesn't even it just doesn't make that much sense anyway, because if she was that was another thing. She burned a dress apparently a few months later that one of her friends, I think the neighbor, saw her doing it in the kitchen, and she was just talking to her about it at the time, and she said this in court, and the prosecutors were like, they turned it around apparently, they were like, well, if she was actually burning evidence, then why would she do right in front of you in the kitchen? She wouldn't, would she? And the witnesses were like, well, no. I guess she wouldn't, would she? So that kind of killed that point, which is fair as well. Because apparently she's a fucking criminal mastermind if she did do this.
Yeah.
But have you got any other idea of who else it could have been, if not her?
No.
So the sister was out. She was out of town. But there was one other person around that didn't really make any sense, and this person has never really.
Pigeon came back to life.
The pigeon. Yeah, you guessed it. We're done. Okay. Now, weirdly, apparently, this didn't really come out. This opinion until very recently. I think they said like the 80s or something like that.
Yeah.
In comparison to when it happened, very recently. The main other suspect, other than Lizzie Borden, was Uncle John Morse that was there. Basically, he had turned up the night before, completely unannounced, without any luggage, which is weird straight away, really.
Yeah.
And then he was not seen on that day from when he left at 8:30. No, he was seen around 9 a.m., sorry. And he wasn't then later seen until 12 p.m. The murders happened, I think, around 11 a.m. somewhere. It was 11 a.m. when he came back, wasn't it? So, yeah, so it was like, what, 11:05, 11:10, something like that, the murder. He stated, when the police talked to him, because obviously they did talk to him, but they seemed to gloss over it mainly, because he stated to the police that he was visiting a sick relative with the town doctor during the time of the murders. However, and I don't see how this was missed in court, which makes me think maybe, I don't know, but however, the same doctor that he was apparently with was also looking over the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Borden at the time.
Boss?
Exactly.
Oh, come on, it's him. It's him.
But such a long time frame.
Uncle Fester. Uncle Fester did it. That's case closed. Done.
It looked like Abraham Lincoln, to be honest, more than Fester.
No, 20 years ago.
A big old bushy beard. Although I don't know if he had the body of Abraham Lincoln, which is fine. Also, the room Abby Borden was found in, was a room that Uncle John Morse had slept in the night before.
Right.
And also, by trade, he is a butcher, and some believe that the wounds could have been caused by a big meat cleaver, which makes sense if you think about.
Yeah.
Enough force as well. And the last bit of motive, Morse and Andrew Borden apparently had a failing business together, which was believed to be involved in a motive. Yeah, so it was failing. I don't know how him killing the other person would have helped that, though. Insurance, or I don't know, he took over control of it. Maybe he was doing something that he didn't like how the other guy was doing it, vice versa. You can see something there. There's some connections that it wouldn't just be a random for no reason.
Yeah.
other than that, some say that Lizzie and the maid did it together because they were lesbian lovers. Because it seems that in the future,
Oh,
Lizzie
there's always a lesbian. There's always a lesbian involved in these stories. For God's sake, you know, it's like Black Swan. It's like for God's sake.
It's a great film, just for that one scene.
Yeah. It's like if Brokeback Mountain was like lesbians instead of gays. Like honestly, that like would have just forever. People, will forever remember that.
I could fully imagine them doing that. They brought out a female Ghostbusters. They could totally bring out a female Brokeback Mountain. It would do better as well.
Probably, yeah, it would. Just because blokes are wrong'uns. Like honestly, we are just anything to do with two women. Happy days. I love that. Yeah.
And at the same time,
it's like blokes in clubs.
I can't watch that as well at the same time.
It's like blokes in clubs. Like the second that you see a girl kissing another girl, every single bloke just goes.
You can't help it.
It's like, it's like, dude, like get out more. Like there's plenty of stuff on the internet. Like just because it's live action, leave it alone.
Try ask if you can join in because it works sometimes. Like
yeah. Can I join in? It's like, how creepy would you have to be in order to do that, though?
It's only like that, sure, yeah.
Tap her on the shoulder. Excuse me, mind if I join? It's like, no.
So that was, anyway, though, the story of Lizzie Borden. I think that's everything involved with that. So that's the thing, man, with that story. Like, it really surprised me when I first heard about it. I thought, well, she's probably just going to be blatantly, definitely killed them all. But no, I really don't think she did after reading it all.
Yeah, I think that is trollop. I don't think she did it at all.
Trollop. But it shows how even back then, man, like back in the 1800s or wherever it was, like the end of the 1800s, how much impact the media had because it's still known now. The only people I knew that heard about it knew it was a murderer or was a ghost or something,
Yeah. Stories stand the test of time. It is a thing.
The media fucking stand the test of time. Sadly.
Hearsay, mate. Hearsay.
I don't know. They weren't that good.
Yeah.
That's
the cause.
The what?
The cause. No one remembers the cause. They're an Irish band.
I literally have no idea what you're talking about now.
Yeah, there's a band. Just look them up after you've done the cause.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna know.
Like same era as Anastasia.
Oh. So when we were young and we didn't really know anything about music, but we listened to music because we were cool.
True.
Okay, cool. I understand now in that case then.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that then, man. So I think we're pretty done then now.
Sweet.
Cool.
It's been a pleasure, mate.
Yeah, same as always.
As always. Cheers, man.
Cool, man. Other than that, then it's just a quiz then in a few weeks, and then you got anything else to do in beforehand?
Again, I've got another gig that I am attempting to set up in Worcester, but at the moment details are fairly light and I haven't arranged anything yet, but hopefully it should be really good if it gets off the ground. So be good, man. So yeah, quiz not this week, next week. So yeah. Cool.
Next week, and then I'll let you know any more about what we were talking about before then as well, before the call, because I'll speak to the other guys about it and then just try and get some stuff sorted out because I've got some cool ideas for things we can do, so I'll let you know.
Yeah, sweet.
All right, cool, man. Take care then. Thank you very much. Cheers, as always.
Hello, Internet. You're listening to the In Your House Comedy Podcast with
Kd and Kersey.
Now hold on to your butts. Keep your arms and legs inside the podcast at all times. Prepare to have an autographical orgasm in 3, 2, 1.